I'm an old fart, and I have a guilty pleasure. I like knives. I'm not an expert or an official representative of anything or anyone in any way. I just like knives. And for the last year or so, during the COVID pandemic, you've been virtually visiting me and taking a little tour through my collection of small folding pocket knives. I appreciate the company. It's helped to keep me sane. Today we're going to have a look at this little knife. This is a Banter by We Knives. And we'll do a little explanation of how this came to be in the collection. I've been aware of this knife for a year or so since I first saw it appear on the scene and started seeing reviews. It has an interesting background. One of the big online knife review channels used to have a section called Knife Banter, and one of the hosts in that section was a guy named Ben Peterson. He eventually left the channel, and he designed this knife. He now runs his own knife design and commentary site, and he designed this knife and he named it the Banter after the old channel, the Knife Banter. I think that's kind of clever, you know, a knife reviewer splitting off and designing his own knife and giving it a clever name. It's manufactured by We Knives, which is a high-end manufacturer, so I expected to like it and decided to have a look. I certainly like the concept. There are a number of ordering options available. I was able to pick up this one. So formally, this is a Banter by We Knives. A variety of scale options are available and a couple of blade finishes. So this is the regular satin finished blade. You can also get a black blade. And this is the gray G10 handle. You can get other colors and other materials, although there wasn't anything else that I liked the looks of in stock at the distributor that I use. So this was the obvious choice. We'll do a quick little tour. Actually, quick aside, you know, when I first started doing these reviews, I said I was going to try not to get too technical. The details are all available online. And I actually had a comment from somebody saying they appreciated me not getting too technical. Thank you for that comment. But then I kind of slipped back into it because it's just so damn tempting. So I'll try to back off a little bit. So anyway, mechanism. So this is a thumb stud operating knife, kind of a classic design. It's running on bearings. It is a liner lock. There's the liner lock with a good lockup. The size is interesting. It's a compact knife. You can see it's not huge. Now we're going to go through a few comparisons, and you see it's not small. It's not as small as some of my small knives, but it's smaller than my medium knives, so we'll call it compact. Overall, it is 166 millimeters when it's open, and to use the internationally recognized knife standard, that's 0.9 pocket calculators in length. Just to compare it to a couple of other familiar knives, my mini griptilian is sort of my standard measure. Mini grip is 172, so this is just a couple of millimeters smaller than the mini griptilian. It is also a couple of millimeters smaller than the small Sabenza. So what's it the same size as? The closest I can come is the Kaiser Feist. It's about 1 millimeter longer than the Kaiser Feist, or the small Inkosi. Again, it's about 1 millimeter longer. So it's that sort of size. But I will say it looks larger than those other knives because of the width. It has quite a wide blade and a wide body, sort of a chunky look. So it looks larger than it is. The weight, it's not a featherweight. This is 81 grams, so which is the same weight as the small Sabenza. So not a featherweight. It's a compact knife with a fair heft to it. The blade is nice. It is a spear point blade, which I think is quite an attractive blade. 2.9 inches long, so if you're in one of those magic 3-inch jurisdictions, this one's okay. And I think the shape is basically attractive. It's wider than usual. Most of my knives, here, just pull. Most of my knives don't have blades that wide, and that sets it apart a little bit, makes it look a little bit unusual. Frankly, I'm not really sure I like it, but anyway, it is what makes it unique. The blade is SV35 or S35 VN steel, which is a fine steel, and it has a tiny sharpening choil. And I do think a sharpening choil is important, so there is one here. The body, this particular one is G10 scales. The body is simple, and it's almost rectangular, and I'm having trouble finding a word for it. You know, like chunky. It's substantial. It's got some size. It's got some width. It looks larger than it is. I mean, chunky seems to be the right word. Nice clip, a simple polished steel clip, and it's deep carry, which is nice. I like deep carry clips. And it has a lanyard hole, offset lanyard hole, so if you want to have a lanyard, I don't really think a lanyard would suit this knife, but it's an option if that mattered to you. And I usually mention ambidextrousness because I have some left-handed friends, so like any thumb stud, you know, opening, sure, you can open it with your left hand. Again, I don't know if I can because I'm pretty awkward with my left hand. See, oh, look at that, even I can do it. For left-hand openers, the clearance on the left side is the same as the clearance on the right side. There's no cutaway, so there's no disadvantage to left-hand people for opening. The clip, no, the clip is not movable to the other side. And closing, well, you know, it's a liner lock. So as with any liner lock, a lefty would have to operate the lock with your thumb. And lefties, I suppose you probably have learned to do that, but I find it awkward. So I would say it is not very ambidextrous. And for people who care, manufactured in China by We Knives, one of the higher end manufacturers in China, in my experience. So that's the background. I hope that was a little bit briefer than I had been slipping into with some other commentary. A lot to like about this knife. What do I like? Well, as I said, I do like the blade. I think I like the shape. Certainly with the blade so wide, it is quite a sturdy blade. So you definitely don't get any sense of flimsiness with this knife. It's wide enough, feels useful. I just recently actually was carrying this knife while doing some outdoor work, and I had some heavy cardboard that this blade didn't make me nervous, sort of prying sideways as I was cutting some cardboard to keep clearance. There's lots of metal there to support the blade. I didn't feel like I was going to break anything. Other things I like. It's a small thing, but look at the scale screws. The scale screws are not those horrible T6 torque screws that are so common on other knives and that strip so easily. So I like that it's got sort of larger scale screws. Now, unfortunately, everybody who maintains knives has a T8 driver. These aren't T8s, these are T9s, which is less common. But at least they're not those horrible T6s. Which is why I do have to say the pivot screw is a T6. What the hell? The large screw, the one that could easily stand a larger socket size, is a T6. So I'm sure there's some design reason for it, but that was a little surprising. Anyway, this is supposed to be what I like. Like the action, very smooth, can open it slowly, get a really good, solid, confidence-inducing click. So with a secure lock, you can open it slowly. It is also very flickable. Satisfying clunk both ways. I like the appearance. I've always liked in We Knives, I like the classy We logo built into the back end of the pivot screw. I think that's quite a clever, or classy, I don't know. Classy is a good word, classy logo. And I like it is comfortable to hold. It's only a 3.5 finger grip, but the place where the pinky sits is angled, so it sits there nicely. There's no hot spot. In fact, I'd say there aren't very many hot spots at all. There's a minor one for the clip. It's a bit of a digging into my palm there, but it's not bad. And there is some subtle jimping. There's jimping here on the back of the blade in a really good spot for just a firm a firm grip on the back of the blade. And a little bit of jimping here on the liner lock. Again, secures the fingers, so you get a really good, comfortable, secure feeling grip. So there's a lot to like. What I don't like? Well, a few things. First, I wish there was more exotic scale material available. Carbon fiber in this knife would be fantastic. I would pay more for that. Ben, I don't imagine you're listening, but I would pay more for carbon fiber scales or a wood inlay. The G10 is just a little dull. Great grip, very sturdy and reliable scales, but a little dull. The other thing I'll say is the action was a little rough out of the box. It felt a little bit dry and gritty. And that's probably because it was dry. I don't know how long it sat on the shelf before I got it. So just, a couple of drops of nano oil. I didn't even have to take it apart. Just let a couple of drops of nano oil seep down into the space on both sides of the blade, and now it's just fine. And I haven't had to do it again, so I think it just needed a little newborn love, and now it's fine. Next thing that I don't particularly like, this is a common problem with liner lock knives. I unlock, I start closing, my thumb is in harm's way. There's a very sharp blade moving towards my body parts, and that scares me. And unlike a flipper, there's no tab or anything that's acting as a protector there. The first contact that will happen is the blade with my thumb. So I don't like that about liner lock knives in general, and this one suffers from it. Next thing I'll mention is that disengaging the lock is a little bit cramped. There's the lock. I guess that's why it needs this heavy jimping here. There is no cutaway. It's common in some designs that the presentation side scale is cut away a little bit more so that you can get your thumb in there against the liner lock to disengage it. Not so here. So you have to do the wedge meat of thumb into space trick to disengage. So a little cramped. And the final thing, which I'll come back to in a second when we do ratings, the blade width is very useful. It matches the handle width. But it detracts, I think, it detracts from the gentleman's knife look a little bit. And since gentleman's knife is the main thing I collect, I'd like a slightly narrower blade, as I have on so many of my other knives. But again, I'd say that's not really what this knife is targeting. So it's not a fair complaint, but there it is. So speaking of ratings, let's have a look through my internationally unknown knife rating systems. First, the NT-GK rating, which is for non-threatening gentleman's knife. And we'll do NT, non-threatening first, then GK, gentleman's knife. So for non-threatening, it's got good and bad news. The good is it's small. Small is less threatening. It has a simple blade. No, harpoon barbs and zombie disemboweling marks on it. That's good. Very important for being non-threatening. You can open it slowly. And in fact, beauty of thumb studs, you can open it two-handed. Because what you don't do in front of nervous people or people you don't know, if you're trying to be non-threatening, is flick the blade open because they go, switchblade. So this has other options. I like that. And as I mentioned, no stupid tactical decorations. Now, the bad news for non-threatening is, well, we already mentioned the wide blade. That is a very meaty blade. That does not look like a letter opener. That's a knife. And the other thing is, when you open it, especially if you flick it, it is quite loud. So, if I'm trying to quietly open this thing, in a conference room, hoping not to draw too much attention before I, cut my apple. I know, why would I do that in a conference room? And I don't even like apples. That's loud. That draws attention. So, minor complaints. So I'm going to give it an A, not an A+, an A for non-threatening. For gentleman's knife, it's going to do less well because I don't really think it's designed to be a gentleman's knife. It's designed to be a good, reliable, utility, everyday carry. So anyway, good and bad. Good for a gentleman's knife. The compactness is nice. And the deep carry clip is nice on a gentleman's knife because it sinks deeply into your pocket and very little protrudes. Now, on the bad, it is heavy-ish, so it does weigh down the corner of your pocket. And on the bad, well, it's kind of boring scales. This exotic material would be nicer. Flat, matte, gray G10 is just not that exciting. The width of both the blade and the body says more utility knife than gentleman's pocket jewelry. And finally, I think the We logo is quite elegant here. This side of the blade is almost subtle, just a very small steel rating down in there. But I don't really care for this thing. On the side of the blade is this big trademark here, W-I-U-G in a diamond. Now, as a gentleman's knife, I generally like undecorated blades or less decorated blades, and that kind of jumps out at you. And it just begs somebody to ask, what does W-I-U-G mean anyway? You know, is that the manufacturer, or is that like the city in Norway where it was built? And of course the answer is none of those things. It's Ben Peterson's catchphrase on the old Knife Banter channel, starting every episode with, "What's up, guys?" So that has become his trademark. Now that's cute. Knife nerds get a big kick out of that. Hell, I get a big kick out of that. I do think that it's a mark against it as a gentleman's knife. Now, imagine, the Mont Blanc pen having on the side of it, CCVM, comment ça va, monsieur? Right? Like, come on, really? I would pay extra for a less decorated blade. So anyway, all things said, not because of the W-I-U-G, that's just odd, but because of the boring scales and the width, I'm going to give it a B as a gentleman's knife. Next rating is the KN rating, which is what will my knife nerd friends think of this knife. Lots of pros on that. I think the Ben Peterson backstory is a pro. Most knife nerds are familiar with the Knife Channel and the Knife Banter show and Ben Peterson, and so they'll like that, and they'll like the W-I-U-G trademark. That's, what's up, guys? That's Ben Peterson. So my knife nerd friends will like that. They'll like the steel. S35VN is a fine steel, of course, developed by Crucible for Chris Reeve, so pretty good pedigree. Sharpens fairly easily, holds an edge well. Not current steel. Chris Reeve is gradually replacing it with S45, but damn good steel. In a class above some of the budget steels. Great action. Knife nerds will love that. And actually a really good knife to cut with. Grippy scales, so really easy to hold firmly onto. Wide, sturdy blade. Easy to hold, easy to cut with. Knife nerds will like all those things. The only con I can really think of for knife nerds is the shape and the scales together. It's a little dull. It is a really nice, everyday carry utility knife. But it's not really sexy or ornamental in any way I can point out. It's just, a little dull. So anyway, lots of pros. One kind of feeble con. I think I'd give it an A as a knife nerd rating. And finally, the CMR, the cut myself rating. I have never cut myself on this knife. Just with the thumb in harm's way, I suppose it's not impossible, but I have not cut myself on it, so it gets an A. So that brings us to the end. And in summary, I like this knife. I carry it quite often. It is a nice, simple, reliable, everyday carry knife with a cute backstory. Great blade, great action. As gentleman's jewelry, it's a little dull. So I don't wear this, with my tuxedo or when I'm having dinner with the Queen. But as an everyday carry knife for a routine day in the office, very nice. Very useful utility knife with a pleasant action. So I like it quite a lot. If I actually want a small compact knife with me, not pocket jewelry that happens to be able to cut things, then this is near perfect. And that brings us to the end. Thanks for watching. See you again. Bye-bye.